like the motorcycles didn't bother me. I really like the Hydro Terminators, the worm Terminators in the
eels.
water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was real cool.
Those are cool. I like
that.
those.
All that fit into me with like what I had assumed and put in my head about Skynet. But the giant Transformer, it kind of stuck out to me as not being
much.
from Terminator.
Yeah. So what's odd about that is the size of it,
It's
right?
huge.
Like it is cool, but it doesn't feel believable that they would build something that big.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't really make any sense. Like,
but
but
the
then
Japanese
if you look at
branch
it,
of Skynet created a giant robot.
Under the
those
Bandai
hunter
Corp.
killers are big.
Yeah,
right? Like the hunter killers are really big as well. So I guess it's okay that they would, but to build a big airplane is more believable than building this big giant walking machine. So I like the sequence because it's pretty exciting. And it leads to the Moto Terminator sequence, which is also really exciting. But that whole sequence and the way the special effects were done with it, like the ball knocking the motorcycle over, and then how it ends up knocking that hunter-killer out and almost pulling them off the bridge. Like, it's a really exciting sequence, and I think it's as good as the one from T3, which I loved so much with the big crane.
Your favorite action sequence in any film. It's the crane.
Oh,
chase.
like, yeah, so I really like that. I like those things a lot. And I was really impressed with what they did. The T600s, like, we did touch on them briefly, but even the sound design of these machines in this era and this, like, digital communication that they have really worked for me and really added a layer of believability to these machines for me.
That's true. That's interesting. Speaking of sound, though, so the composer for
Danny Elfman.
This is not a Danny Elfman.
This is
score
not a
at
Danny
all,
Elfman
which is
score.
crazy because it's like, oh, you have another gear, like you have another mode. This is kind of interesting.
He kind of inverted the Terminator theme, right?
Yeah. And it's just like it's interesting to see him kind of go off brand, like with his compositional style. Because if you didn't look up who the composer was for this movie, or if you didn't pay attention to the opening credits, like you wouldn't believe that this is a Danny Elfman movie, because like Danny Elfman's, all of his scores are very, very distinct. His style, his style is very, very distinctive as a composer. He writes very much the same way, and a lot of most composers have their own signature, and you could tell that it's their work when they're doing it, and he's definitely no exception. So it's very impressive that he was able to kind of like to evolve his style a little bit and make it fit something like this and kind of expand it and do something different, which is pretty neat.
See, I would have thought it was Brad Fiedel again, because you got those clangs, and like I noticed it a couple of times with Marcus, but there was like kind of that acoustic guitar sound that you heard in Terminator 2. And like I noticed it when he was like he saw the reflector on the road.
Yeah, well, see, Marcus has like he had
Western.
Yeah, he had like an orchestral theme, but then but it also on the acoustic guitar also. Well, and that's the one you're thinking about, and so that's interesting. It's the same melody, but just done a little bit differently.
Well, we never really talked about the music in the other Terminators, right? I mean, Brad Fiedel, it was all electronic. It was great in the first two. Then Marco Beltrami comes in for Terminator 3. Very lame. There was like no themes. Again, talking about the continuity of like just the franchise, it's all lost there. Mm-hmm. The only time you hear the Terminator theme is that they have an orchestral version of it at the credits. Like, just odd there, And I felt like this was, even though we didn't hear like the same exact Brad Fiedel, that kind of stuff, this felt like in the same family. Much like, the Klingon music in Star Trek all feels like the same family, like Jerry Goldsmith or James Horner or whoever's making it. It seems the same. This feels like in the same family of music from the first two. So,
So yeah, again, that's like, I'm impressed by Elfman's his skills there. Because normally he just kind of makes things his own, but this time he made it fit into what came before, the good ones at least.
Mm-hmm. Elfman's a great composer, but some of his music is like kind of tough to listen to sometimes. Like he does really good job at main titles. Like his main title track for the 2001 Planet of the Apes is just outstanding. And honestly, one of my favorite main title sequences in a movie is the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie that he did with Tim Burton.
I never saw the remake.
Oh man, I love that movie so much. I think it's fantastic myself. But his main title sequence in that is really, 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 really cool. So, Yeah, it's good music, and I liked the callbacks to T2 that we heard in the music for this one. I think they did a really good job in this one. I heard them in T3 as well. Like, and I kind of noticed the Beltrami. I thought he did a good job. I mean, I couldn't tell you any themes of it either, but the music worked for me in the movie. So, excellent, right on. Well, is there any other topics you guys want to talk about that we haven't addressed yet, Lance? Anything we haven't hit?
Now we got all the things I wanted to talk about.
Zach, anything for you?
No, I mean we covered a lot of ground there, and I just I think this is a real just a great action movie, and then also a worthy successor in the Terminator franchise. And ultimately, I'm just disappointed it didn't connect the way that I think everyone was hoping it would. For whatever reason, many factors at play here, just didn't connect with general audiences, and I wish they just would have stuck with this and not hit the reset button so soon. Because they had planned the trilogy, just see it through, people. And it made money, just not enough, I guess.
Yeah, that's crazy. I would like to have seen a sequel to this one here, because I did enjoy this a lot. Like I said, the only thing I didn't like is Christian Bale, really. Everything else is like, it didn't really bother me that much. But I don't know, I like this movie quite a bit. So should we do the Terminator impersonators first?
Yeah, so I had a question for you guys then, because for this particular category, Terminator impersonator, right? Do we count Skynet's avatar as Helena Bonham Carter at the end?
I would say no.
Okay, all right, I agree.
I was going to say, do we count Sam Worthington as well? But I would say no.
He is himself. You can't impersonate yourself.
Yeah,
can't be done.
I would say no to Helena Bonham Carter, though.
Well, with that in mind, then we only have one Terminator impersonator in this movie.
Hey, we're supposed to guess. I knew that. So
we only have one Terminator impersonator in this movie. It's the T-800. It's when it's calling for John at the end. It's like, help, help, And that was cool. And we still didn't see the mouth moving and stuff like that. So that's interesting to think about, the endoskeleton talking like that. But that's what it's doing. And you forget, the whole movie, you're not even thinking about that, because we had seen Kyle before that, right? I'm just saying it's a very effective bait and switch, because you'd seen Kyle before that, and then Catherine Bruce was like, oh, come with me. And you don't
live?
You come if you want to live. And you don't see, Kyle again until you hear that. And you're like, oh, no, they're in trouble. So it was a very effective for John and for the audience, I think. So only one for Terminator Salvation. So that brings our grand total of Terminator impersonators to 9 in the franchise. So.
Now, do you want to do ratings next?
Yes, let's do ratings. So, Lance, you're our guest. I'll ask you, out of 5 time displacement units, how many would you give Terminator Salvation?
Can we give halves too?
Of course.
Yes.
I'll give it 3.5.
3.5.
3.5.
To you, what is the weakest part of the movie?
I think,
because we know what Brandon says. He hates Christian Bale. That's been well established. So.
Yes. I think it's Skynet's plan, and the end where with all the exposition, it's like, oh no, this was our doing all along. It's like, no, I'm not so sure. And then they had multiple chances to kill Kyle and John, and it's just you could have won this war at any point in time in this movie, and you didn't. So that's kind of think where it kind of falters for me.
Yeah, as for me, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 time displacement units. I agree on the weakest part. I think it is the plan, and then the exposition of the plan at the end. It was like,
it's a little much.
Bond villain, we're going to tell you our plans. You can stop us.
Sly dog. You got me monologuing.
Incredibles. So to me, though, as I said at the beginning, this was a fresh adventure in the Terminator universe. It wasn't reliant on the same formula that every single other film has had. Even looks like Dark Fate's the same. I'm here to save you. I'm here to fight the bad Terminator. And yes, the climax of this movie became that, but the setup was completely different, and we got to those endings in different ways. And it's a really interesting mythology out there. I do believe that there is life and interest to the Terminator franchise beyond just Arnold. And unfortunately, they reached out with this movie, and it didn't hit the way people wanted to, and it didn't succeed. So they're like, oh, well, I guess we got to have Arnold back, because they've done 2 movies since, both have featured Arnold, and so it's like Arnold or bust apparently in the Terminator franchise as far as the people making the movies are concerned. But I like the expansion of the universe, seeing the future war. I've always wanted a future war movie. We got it with this one, so I'm giving it 4 out of 5. What about you, Brendan?
Yeah, I think I said it earlier at the beginning there, 4 to 5 for me as well. I like this movie a lot. I'm having a tough time deciding whether or not I like T3 or this one more. I'll have to decide that when I do my ratings, because I really like T3, and I think T3 is a lot more fun than this. But I like this one a lot. Like, they're very, very different movies, and that's why I'd have trouble ranking them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I like this one a lot, and I don't understand why people don't like this movie. Like, I posted online, I'm like, I don't like Christian Bale in this movie. I think he's a good Batman, but not a good John Connor.
No!
Yeah. And then somebody responded, he's like, yeah, Terminator Salvation is terrible. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think it's just fine. So, I don't know. I like this movie a lot. I'd rather be the guy that likes Terminator 3 and Terminator Salvation than the guy that hates both.
You might be the only one, Brandon, but good for you. That's why we love you.
I'm happy to be that guy.
It's time for the question, is this franchise fatigued? So, Lance, I ask you, is it?
Whoo. I'd say yeah.
So after this movie,
mm-hmm.
you don't want to see any more Terminators, is what you're saying. You think
so you wouldn't have wanted to see the trilogy. Based on this movie, you wouldn't have wanted to see that trilogy?
Correct. I mean, didn't you see the ending? Like, they won, didn't they?
Look, didn't you hear the monologue? Skynet has a network across the world. Okay, you think this is more finality?
Yeah,
here.
I do.
Okay, I see. Okay,
I do. That's
so you
why.
don't think there's much more to mine from this feature? Is what you're saying?
I mean, in different aspects, yeah, but like after the point that they show us, I don't think so.
Okay, all right. Well, fair enough for me. I would say absolutely not, because I think obviously the end sets up the sequel. There's a Skynet network across the world, and the battle will continue. There's no fate but what we make. This is John Connor, right? So it's setting up more movies.
It's trying to, but I think it's stretching.
Well, but see, that's not the system core that they blew up. There's 11 more years to get in the war. I want to see purple lasers. Right? I want to see that. I want to see the time displacement equipment. I want to see them send the people back in time. Like if this movie was a little different and have that at the end, then obviously there wouldn't be a need for any more. But the way I see it, this was setting up new adventures in the future war, and we'd eventually wrap back around to the end we know has to happen, which is sending the Terminators back and the Protectors back in time. So that's definitely, at this point, I was like, oh, this is great. Terminator's back. I didn't like T3, but I love T4, and I'm glad we've kind of moved into the future. And then they hit the reset button, so I'm very, very disappointed. So what about you, Brandon?
I would say that, no, I don't think that this is fatigued yet. I think that there's 11 more years until Judgment Day, and there's a lot of ground that they could cover in there. So, yeah, I think that they should definitely keep doing these movies.
Well, they will.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, that's good news. Yeah, we should talk about it when the next one comes out.
We should do that.
In a couple weeks. Should we do this in a couple weeks?
All right, Lance. Well, when you're not signing your body over to science when you're on death row, where can people find you online?
They can find me on Twitter at Sir Lance Laster.
All right, what about you, Brendan?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Matella. You can find me on the Trek FM network with a show called The Line, which is all about Star Trek Picard. I do that show with my friends Justin and Chrissy. And then over on the Fandom Podcast Network, as well as in our own independent feed, I have a monthly podcast called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast, where my friends Chris and Tom and we cover a Hitchcock film every single month. And the next episode that we're going to have come out here, I might have just come out actually here in October, is Rebecca. So the Academy Award winner for Best Picture in 1940. So that's definitely a good discussion you don't want to miss. We had a lot of fun. Zach, where can people find you when you're not selling your soul for a kiss?
Well, you can find me personally on Twitter at MoronZach. That's MOOREONZACH. I'm also the host of my own podcast, Always Full on a Smallville. We talk about each and every episode of that Young Superman show over there. You can find us on Twitter at Always Smallville with one S. I'm also host of Trek FM's Standard Orbit, an original series podcast. We talk about all things Captain Kirk and the Enterprise, and you can find us on Twitter at Trek FM.
At this time, we'd like to thank our wonderful executive producers of the network, Tony Robinson and Ken Tripp. We can't do it without them. We would also like to thank Zach Tripp, who created our wonderful theme music. And if you want to find the network on Twitter, it's at UFP Earth. You can send us an email, contact@ufp.earth. And yeah, we're on Facebook as well, so be sure to check us out. And we have a new show on the network as well that has a couple of episodes launched called Mickey's Marvels. Patrick and Chris go through many different aspects of Disney films. They've had episodes on Fantasia and WALL-E and other stuff like that. So definitely check it out. But that's all we've got for you. Until next time, when we cover